Good morning, everyone. And thank you guys again for getting up early with us for these coffee chats to stimulate your mind as you start your day. I am so excited to have the doctors Kelly Farrow and Dwalunda Alexander with us this morning for our coffee chat. How has the amplification of women's voices in ministry impacted cultural norms? So I'm going to bring these women to the stage in just a moment, but I do want to say thank you to all of you for sticking with us for these 3 days, whether you are watching the replay or you've been with us live. We truly appreciate your time investment in these sessions. We pray that you will do something different with the information that you receive. Don't just watch the videos and say, oh, that sounded really good, but really get your notepad out and think about what's one thing that I can do differently as a result of the sessions that you have been a part of. So without further ado, Dr. Alexander, Dr. Kelly, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey,
Good morning.
morning.
So, we are here to talk about women in ministry and leadership. But before we begin, Dr. Farrow, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am Reverend Dr. I usually start off in DLE Sunday with this is your girl, Reverend Dr. Kelly U. Farrow, coming to you live with Reverend LaKesha and Reverend Alexander. I am the creator and curator of Circle of Sacred Fire Preaching Intensive for Women of Color in Ministry, also lovingly known as the Circle, also lovingly known as the Nation at this point, because we have a wonderful, wonderful, diverse across the country, diverse population of women preachers who are into Black scholarship, into Black preaching, into leadership development. And so we're really excited about that. I also serve with Pastor Gabby and Pastor Andrew Wilkes and Double Love Experience Church. I also serve at the Common Avenue Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. So I serve at 2 churches. Yes, I do a lot of stuff. And I also serve with Women of Color in Ministry project with Dr. Martha Simmons and the Rise Mentoring Network for Women of Color in Ministry with Dr. Lisa Rhodes.
Yes. All right, Dr. Alexander, who is about to become official next month. Congratulations, sis. Congratulations.
Thank you. So, good morning. I am Dwalunda Alexander. Soon, my God, to be Reverend Doctor, joining the
Yeah.
ranks. I am completing my Doctor of Ministry in preaching. I am the founder of Preaching in Purple. We're coming up on 1 year old, looking to do a lot more in the world of creating platforms and stages and places for women, particularly down here in Texas and in the South, who have not been afforded the opportunity to have platform and space. We got some dynamic preachers out here in this world who need to be heard. And so Preaching in Purple is looking to do that work, as well as be a place for sharing writings and thoughts and think pieces and things of that nature. So excited about the work ahead this upcoming year once this doctrine is complete. And then I also serve as the preaching associate at Greater St. Stephen First Church here in Fort Worth, Texas, with the Reverend Dr. Michael Bell. And so I am busy between secular work and then also sacred work, and the crossing of those two worlds here lately, and excited about all that God is doing and is about to do.
Amen.
Wonderful. So both of you have some years. We don't have to say how many years in ministry. But in the past year with the pandemic and us having to go in virtual space, we have seen an amplification of women's voices in ministry and us being able to create more spaces. Let's jump into our question. How do you feel like that is changing or will be changing cultural norms around women in ministry? And we can start with you, Dr. Farrow.
I think first of all, there's some things that we gained and that we lost in this pandemic life, right? And I like to focus on what we've gained, and what we've gained is women creating their own spaces, women seeing that I don't need to serve in the second chair only to be validated, for my ministry to be heard, for me to be able to go out and fulfill the Great Commission, because the Great Commission doesn't require you to be a pastor or a associate minister or anything. Like, it requires you to have a servant's heart. It requires you to come and do thus says the Lord, right? And so I think women have always had the idea. We've always been prepared. We've always been ready. And the pandemic and virtual spaces, we always kept up with technology. We've always been administratively gifted. We've always, I keep going on, right? We've always been ready. And so the pandemic opened up a space where we just decided to step out. And I've seen a good dozen or more women just stepping out and doing their books and creating their own spaces. And I call it creating your own space because some things might already be out here and we don't have to necessarily recreate the things that are already out here. We get to create something new. And so if you have an idea and you don't see the idea being fluid and done in the world, that means because we're waiting on you to do it, right? We don't have to keep doing the same old thing the same old way. And I feel like whether it be women I've talked to or women I've seen, we've just said, look, I believe God. I know that God called me. I know that I might be a little nervous. Yeah, I might be a little afraid. It's okay. I'm gonna do it afraid. Because what I usually tell the women in Circle Nation is that we need your voice. We need what you bring to the table. We need what you're offering. We need that. We need that added to the collective. The collective as the body of Christ, right? We need for all of this to be seen, heard, and felt, because there are little girls and little boys and even seasoned saints who need to see the witness of God in your life, right? The scripture says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Well, how are people supposed to do that if they're not engaging? When they bite into your life, what are they going to taste? Are they going to taste fresh innovation, or they're going to taste bitterness, right? And so I think pandemic has given us options, and options whether it be in, am I going to move forward? Am I going to get myself wholeheartedly right to bring Reverend Jennifer in the room? Am I going to work on myself and enact and envision and move forward with the things that God has given me? Or am I just going to stay here and just kind of, fade off into the background? I think women have chosen to move forward. I think we said, the heck with the background. I was going to use another word, but it's early in the morning. The background, we're just going to move forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. What are your thoughts, Dr. Alexander?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with the foundation Dr. Kelly has laid, and I mean everything that she stated is so true. I would also say that because of I guess what I would call the ecclesiological framework, that if you're traditional church background, you're used to, if you're a woman in leadership, a woman called to the preaching ministry, that you may deal with people who like the idea of saying that they support women in ministry. But it's just that they like the idea of it. They like that it sounds good. It's the buzzword and all of these things, but you don't see it actually manifesting. And so what has happened in what I've witnessed with some close to me and then from afar is that absolutely they've said, I was able to actually be away from my church setting for some months because doors were closed since last March. And in that being away, that calling that God placed on my life, where I wasn't necessarily getting the affirmation in that place and in that space, I've had room and time now to step back and look at that and say, all of this brilliance that I have, all of this hard work that I'm putting in, reading, writing, thinking, I now have the opportunity and the time to not necessarily feed into somebody else's vision, but take what God has called me to, purposed me to, and create a space and create with that genius that God has given to me. And I talk to a lot of women and a lot of sisters about, yes, we support and we do feed into our local church ministries. And I mean, we know as the women, we're doing all of the things in our local church, all of them, all of the things,
All of
everything in our local church settings. But we don't always get the respect that comes with the things that we're doing. We don't get the titles and the positions, the salaries that come with everything that we're doing. And so what has happened now is that sisters have stepped back in order to step up. I've seen sisters step back from that setting and say it's time for me to step up in a different way. I'm one of them who looked at and reevaluated how I was spending my time concerning what I knew God was calling me to, while also still doing this work. and saying, you know what, it's time for more. It's time for more of what I know I'm purposed to do. It's time for the voice that God has given each of us who's been on the back burner for so long because we're waiting for the affirmation. We're waiting for the affirmation of typically that one person who's in the senior seat, and the people have spoken and the other sisters have spoken and said, we're affirming you and saying we need your voice and we need it now.
I love that. I love that. One of the questions that I've had kind of, I guess, foaming in the back of my mind is around like women in leadership in ministry, because I feel like um and this is not to disqualify men. Like men, we're just not talking about y'all today. So it's like nothing against you, nothing bad about you, but we're really just focusing this conversation on centering where women are in ministry and leadership. And I felt like, sometimes in our desire to step back and step forward and to be in leadership, like we want to create our own and not necessarily join something that is already, so that we can get the training to be prepared. And I think like that's one of my fears, is that there will be some people who are not really prepared to lead and will kind of like put themselves out there. And then when they don't get the response that they want, then it will say, oh, it's because I'm a woman, when it's because you didn't prepare yourself to step out there. So what advice do you have for women who are, interested in, hey, I want to start my own platform, or I want to, jump out here? Like, what do they need to do to kind of prepare themselves? Because it's not easy, and you don't get like the immediate support. Like everybody's like, it may look easy because we've been doing it for some time and we've gone through like those obstacles, but it's really hard and it takes a lot of internal strength to get to the point that you all see. So what advice do you have? And we can start with you, Dr. Alexander.
Okay. Um, I would probably say, first and foremost, stop trying to do it alone. I'm not going to say don't try to do it alone. In most cases, because we are so used to doing it all, we just we jump into doing it alone. And we could have friends, we could have ministry sisters and partners who we know we can reach out to, but there is something that says, no, I have to do this just me. And no, we don't have to do it just me, just me. No, you don't. Stop trying to do it alone. There is, of course, there's wisdom that comes from talking to and having like your multitude of counsel, right? There's wisdom that comes from that. There is the opportunity to not make some mistakes when you listen to sisters who've gone before you who may have made those mistakes. There is the opportunity to learn from someone who's gone through the trenches to know exactly where the traps are and where the obstacles are. And so stop trying to do it alone. A lot of times we don't see the manifestation of our dreams and our visions because we weren't meant to come out here trying to do it alone. There is safety and wisdom that comes from having think partners and having those that you can bounce your ideas off of, not to say that what you're putting out there is wrong and they're trying to, shut you down or compete with you. And we've got to get out of that mindset that if I try to bring somebody else in, what if they compete with me? That's not what we're doing. There is room enough for everybody to inhale and exhale, and nobody's going to stop breathing. There's room at the table. So stop trying to do it alone.
Love that. Dr. Farrow, what are your thoughts?
I love that too, Dr. Alexander, because I don't do circle work alone, right? I do it work with a collective. We are a collective. There are a lot of conversation partners, think partners. Cairo Circle is a board of 7 women who inspire this work alongside me. They journey, we journey in this work together. And so the other side of the coin, not doing it by yourself and then thinking about what do you need to do internally, what introspection do you need and healed. So there is a story in regard to, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me specifically, Indian ceramics. And when a pot gets cracked, there is a material that's made of laces of gold and other materials that they use to fill in the cracks. And so we need to know what our cracks are and what we need to fill in those cracks, so we're serving from whole places, right? We need to take breaks, we need to do self-care, and self-care has become the catchphrase of the season. But what does that look like? That means taking vacation, giving yourself off one day a week, not drowning in perfectionism. Touch two people. Everything is not going to go perfectly. I saw Dr. Shalita put up on Facebook the other day, perfectionism is an illusion, right?
Mhm.
And so get comfortable with being perfectly imperfect, right? Get comfortable with the fact that I'm not gonna check off all the boxes, and that's okay. Because Black women have been really told and validated that the work we do is great, and the work that we didn't get a chance to do yet, that's okay. Like, you can get to it at another time. It don't all have to be done today. But we're so used to carrying so much weight on our backs. We're so used to just keep going nonstop. And no one never stops us, including ourselves, right? So what does it look like to just go hang out with your girls on the beach and have a good time? And what does it look like to wear a sexy swimsuit, even though you feel like you need to butter your rolls and all and put jelly in between them? Does it really matter? No, it does not, because it liberates you to have a good amount of freedom. And then when you're free, you can set free other people. But you have to be willing to look in introspection, to set yourself free, but do things that inspire your whole self, um, that collectively heal your whole self, that brings, so that your authentic voice, who you really are under all the layers of mask and stuff. We heard Reverend Jen talk about mask earlier this week. So you can remove all of that stuff and people can get to see who you are, and that authenticity people resonate with now, right? It's the form and fashion, the pretentiousness. God help me with the pretentiousness. I can't do it. The pretentiousness and all that stuff is laid to the side, so that when Reverend Alexander shows up, and Reverend LaKesha shows up, when I show up, it all in the same room, we're still able to meet the different needs of the different women and men who are in the room, because we come from a wholehearted place. So Reverend Alexander says, don't do this by yourself. I fully agree. And on the other side of the coin, do something for yourself and hear yourself.
Yeah, I think that is so important. And you did bring up, Reverend Jen talking about like us taking off the mask. So I feel like that has been one of the changes that we have seen, because and I'm just gonna put it out there. Y'all know I don't have a filter. Like I don't know how to like wax words poetically or whatever. But it's like at one point, like, women had to show up and we had to have on the pantyhose and the girdle, and you gotta have, like, that was never me. And it was like, people are just like, now that you're in ministry, you gotta, stop wearing those high heels and you gotta stop doing this. And I was like, but why? Like, God called me as I am, and as long as like everything is covered, like, why does it matter like how I look just because you decide to wear pantyhose? I don't like pantyhose. And I say that because there's a generation of women watching us.
Yeah, yeah.
And for this next generation, if they don't see themselves in us, then it really makes me wonder, will they see a space in ministry for them?
Yeah.
Because they're like, I don't do the pantyhose, I don't do that. So if we have like this image that we're trying to create that they don't see themselves in, then can we really impact the next generation? What are your thoughts on, just like women in their 20s? And I don't know, like, do you see a lot of women in their 20s who are coming into ministry and who want to be a part of this work? Dr. Farrow, we can start with you.
Yeah, there's a lovely young lady, Amanda Danielle, who is in her 20s and doing this work. Tamisha Mills, who is doing this work. And I always encourage my younger counterparts and colleagues to do it as their whole self. Look, if you don't want to wear pantyhose, then don't wear no pantyhose. First of all, they hot in July.
Right.
Now, there's some things you take along with you, and there's some things that you let go, right? So I still wear a slip. I'm not going outside with a little bit of lycra on my booty and or maybe a slip. That's
Right,
just me,
right.
right? Because I'm aware of my body image.
That part.
And I am supportive of my body image, and I want to look nice in what I wear. So undergarments for me have never really been a issue or a thing, right? So, but if it's not comfortably you, then that's okay. Then find what's comfortably you, right? Pantyhose, lap scarves are from the devil. Lap scarves, doilies on heads, all of that is body shaming. All of that,
Mhm.
and people might not agree with me, and that's okay. But that is an oppressive way to keep women in their place. Because I don't see no men wear no lap scarf. And if my little kneecap is going to cause you to stumble, then sir, you might want to check out whether or not what's going on with you, because
Come
my
on.
body can't hold the responsibility of
Right.
your desired temptation. That has nothing to do with me. That is the same thing like when we heard in the early 90s that a woman got raped or was molested because of what she had on. People don't realize that those things are the same thought patterns and the same thought
Hmm.
processes. And so then now we covered up to our elbows. Now we covered up women. Now we're covered up to our wrists. But why are black women's bodies always over sexualized
Come on.
and always the commentary? And I'm talking about in black community, not just in white community. Why are black women's bodies always problematized,
Mhm.
especially in church? My body is not a problem. How I decide I want to dress, and I say it out loud so other young women can hear that when you see your hips and when you see your backside, when you see your robustness, your full figureness, your slimness, whatever, your black beauty, your brown skin girl, you and your body is not a problem. If they have an issue where you show up, remember that's their issue.
Right.
It's not your issue. And we have to be able to talk about these things. And I think pandemic hopefully has opened up conversation. We can talk about stop body shaming me.
Hmm.
Stop over sexualizing me. Stop putting on expectations of me. I didn't look, I put on this dress because I thought it looked cute. I wasn't trying to gain nobody's attention.
Come on.
Put on me your stuff.
Come
Yo
on.
with stuff. But that's only recognizable when you have done some wholehearted work. That's only recognizable that people try to put on their shame on you and their expectations on you and their perceptions of how you should be in ministry. Don't wear no red lipstick. Don't wear no red nail polish. Don't have your hair braids. I'm black. My hair's braided. You understand what I'm saying? Or my hair is natural. Get a perm. Don't get a perm. Listen, I heard the gamut when I first got into ministry, and it can run you in the ground because
Right.
sometimes as a new minister, you just really don't know, right?
Right.
And you do want to serve well and you do want to help people, but not to the detriment of losing your own authenticity and your own self. And so body shaming, body control, your perceptions, all that stuff, put that all that stuff back in the box and send it to FedEx and send it back to the sender.
Yes, yes. Dr. Alexander, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, whew, I have been thinking here lately with a couple of young ladies that come to mind, and then some of the things that Dr. Kelly just brought up. Um, so, I think what happens, in addition to attempting to make us as women feel like our bodies are problematized, and that, if we're going to be a part of the preaching ministry in particular, there is this box and this format that you're supposed to fit into. Well, in my mind, the box and the format is you're attempting to take away the things that make me a woman, and because the men are the preachers, right? And so when we as women accept our calling to preach, then the idea is, well, I've got to strip away those things that make her woman and try to fit her into this box. And that box is the box for the man, created by the man. And I don't fit in that box. And none of the women that I know fit in that box because we're not men, we're women. And so all of that audacity, all of the way that we talk, the way that we walk, the way that we approach scripture and text, even in the preaching moment, all of those things are going to be uniquely different. And so when we look at younger women in their 20s who are coming into preaching ministry in particular, my goal for them is to, yes, absolutely affirm. You will see me in jeans and chucks. And if my jeans and my chucks are offensive, I don't have to stand in what clearly is your pulpit, not God's at that point, because you've got your own mindset about what God is going to do through me and my jeans and my chucks, and that must not be possible. So if that's your hang up,
That's your
so I don't have to be over there. That's cool. But I'm going to be in my jeans and my chucks. I might be in my collar if that's what I choose that week. I may be, that those things don't matter. I'm going to be in my heels. I'm going to be in my flats. I've been called stiletto preacher. And I even had to say to somebody when he said it, well, now, sir, because why are you monitoring me that closely as to what kind of shoes I'm wearing?
yeah,
I mean, that's not, why is that relevant? Did you hear anything that was said? So, just making sure that this younger generation understands, come who you are, come as who you are is a real thing. Your authentic self, that word that Dr. Farrow used, that authenticity, that is what the world needs. We don't need women being conformed into the box of a man. We don't need ourselves being stripped away to be made to look or sound like anybody else. When there's attempts to teach even structures of preaching and delivery and models of preaching and all of that, I can teach you those things, and I do teach young sisters those things, but this is not your box. This may be a launching pad. These are some things that you can take and figure out your style and your voice and what works for you, and throw away the things that don't work for you. But it is not a matter of conforming. It is a matter of being comfortable in your own skin, being comfortable in the way that God told you to show up, and take ownership of your space in the way that you have been called to show up and be authentic. And so I try to show that, I try to express that, I try to support that. And look, the vocabulary and and how do your voice sound? And well, I need to speak a little lighter, or I need to speak a little heavier. No, you don't. You speak the way that God, with the voice that God gave you.
That's right.
And embrace that. Show up authentically yourself and own your space.
And I think that Dr. Farrow mentioned this, like, you can't do that if you don't do the internal work. Because I think that so often people end up trying to show up as what they see or what they perceive, which is what leads to that pretentiousness, because they haven't done the self work. And that's what I tell people, like, I work too hard to become the person that I am, to allow your opinions of me to make me want to change. Like, if there's something that I'm doing that's harmful, or if I'm being mean or nasty, like, I get that. But if you just don't like my confidence, if you don't like the fact that I show up in the room and I
Come
don't
on.
look down at the floor and I'm not holding my head down and I'm not acquiescing to you, if you don't like that part of me, like, that's your problem. That's not my problem. And I think that that's where a lot of it comes from. Like, they don't feel like women should, be able to own ourselves and own our bodies and own our spaces, that we should somehow have to ask for permission when we enter rooms to be seen or to be heard.
Oh Lord, yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, am I
Yeah,
right?
That's
no,
true.
you're right.
That's
That's the thought. Like your our whole posture is supposed to be apologetic. Like like my posture
yeah.
is supposed to be that I am sorry that I am
Sorry.
showing up in this full figured brown girl body, and
Right.
I'm not.
I'm
I'm
not.
not sorry. I haven't been. I will not be. But that is the idea, that it's supposed to be this, low and meek, and all of this. And I'm like, that's, it's early, like Dr. Farrow said. So, but that's
I remember.
no.
Look, Reverend Alexander. Look, think about it like this. She right. It is early, but think about it like this. Authenticity is an act of rebellion. If you're in justice work and you really want to get the word out on the things that you're working on, the things that you believe that liberates people, starting at home and starting with self is the first way to get that done, right? And so showing up in the world as you were designed to show up, and how you feel most comfortable showing up, not what people told you on
Right.
how you should show up, but you decide if you even like the color red, or you decide whether or not you want to wear pants or a dress. Those are your collective decisions, and whatever you settle on is how you show up. And that listen, it's gonna make some people mad because they're gonna be. I have the how dare her ministry. How dare she show up, looking like
Yeah.
she's looking and not feeling no kind of way about it. Having my shoulders out right now on this little situation right here is worrying the black church.
Come on.
Listen, I've had that before. Like, how's she gonna run for an office and she got her shoulders out? I'm like, so I can't
I can't.
That's what God is worried about. Like all the stuff happening in the world. Like God is like, yo,
That is
she
what
got her shoulders
that
out.
is it.
Like
Reverend
she
LaKesha,
cannot deliver the word.
not the fact that we are killing the animals in the ocean, but the fact that her shoulders is out in the daytime. I don't have time for that.
Right,
Come on.
right.
It is an act of rebellion, right? And so, Reverend LaKesha, you said something really wonderful earlier that that folks are looking, men are looking to us in ministry, and whether or not they are observing closely or from afar, I'm not really sure, but how we show up will impact them.
Yeah.
Right, how we move in the world will impact them. So I had a conversation with some colleagues, and we decided that mean womanist theory is dead. Because, and I'm saying it out loud because we know some women who profess women's theology who are in women's work who are quite mean.
Yeah.
That's over, right? Some of us are reimagining what women's work looks like, what womanism looks like, because it is ridiculous to be in this level of work and be mean and nasty.
Come on.
Because that creates wounds and hurt for other people. So I saw someone mention Kelly Brown Douglas. Kelly Brown Douglas, not only just in her writing, but in her personhood, is one of the most gracious, sweetest women on the planet. Like, she's doing the work of inclusion and justice. And when you encounter her, she is warm and she is friendly. That has an impact.
It does.
Yeah.
Because I might go out and buy everything now just because she said hello, or just because she makes Black women feel seen.
Right.
She makes us feel seen, right? It's not a form of fashion. It's not water cooler conversation.
Right.
And so having the authenticity, the warmth, the friendliness, the kindness. Look, I'm in the fruit of the spirit. Those things that we don't talk about, the patience, not just the love, peace, and joy. Let's get to the other part, right? Of faithfulness that shows up in your life. People will resonate with that. And that itself will begin to quietly, systemically tear down institutionalized racism, classism, ageism, all those things. And we don't talk about how the intangibles move the needle forward, but how you treat people, how you talk to people. I'm not talking about if you have a bad day. All of us had a bad day and cuss one or two people out. Sure, indeed. And then when we came to ourselves, we said sorry, right? I'm sorry, I cussed you out, right? Because that's the real thing. Because I don't want people to feel like Reverend Farrow, I haven't been perfect my whole life. I haven't. So what? None of us have.
Yeah.
But you get a chance today in this conversation, tomorrow, to get up and do a new thing. And so the intangibleness of working on your character and working on your integrity and how you show up in the world, how you treat people, and how you engage other people, it matters. It has an impact. It's the most powerful impact you can have. And so, yeah, authenticity for me is an act of rebellion.
I love it.
So we have a question from Lucille Green. She says, I agree with everything you all are saying, but the younger generation has a tendency to wear see-through clothing, revealing their undergarments. They also wear very low-cut tops, revealing most of their breasts to church. What do you think about that? So I definitely would have. I'm gonna start and I'll let you guys interject. I think that there's a difference between women in leadership and women who show up at church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have a tendency to want to, as Dr. Farrow was saying, shame people for how they show up, where they never get to the point of getting to leadership. So if you're in my digital discipleship class, I talk about going through the phases of discipleship where you're searching, exploring, beginning, growing, and maturing. And most of the time, the people who show up like that are still searching and exploring, and they're trying to find their space in this work. Because when you find your space and when you've been discipled and you understand who you are in Christ, you don't want to show up with your breast out. Not because I'm afraid of what you're going to say, but that's not how I carry myself. Because I recognize now that I'm a queen and that I am worthy of so much more. But yeah, if I got a few rolls or if my hips are showing and I feel good, that's totally different. But because I'm feeling good about myself. And so I think that we have a tendency to place responsibility on people who are not ready for that responsibility.
Hmm.
I can
What do
agree.
you guys think?
Reverend LaKesha, sometime I would like to sit and talk about the whole observation of women's clothing and how women show up, because there's respectability politics in that, right? There is, in order to be respected and seen as a respectable woman, you have to look a certain way. And that changes depending on who is looking at you, because that can be sometimes subjective. So sometimes if I see a woman come to church and she might have a little bit of cleavage, I'm not offended by her cleavage, right? Because I have to deal with the tension. We have to sit in the tension of the conversation. I have to deal with the tension of why is her cleavage making me feel some kind of way. And I'm not talking about, and let me kind of quantify when I say cleavage. I don't mean you can see her entire breast and all that kind of stuff. I mean, she might have a V-neck on and you can see the split at the top of the V-neck, because that makes some people uncomfortable, right? I'm not talking about when we might see a TikTok video and folks is at a club or something like that. But then there are some time where folks come from the club to church and they have on what they have on, right? And when are we going to still see them as a human being and deserving our respect regardless of what they have on? Because the respectability politics conversation comes through white lenses, and white lenses have always defined Black bodies, and we don't understand that part of that matriculation of that thought has come from slavery, and how white people discerned and thought Black people should be looking and feeling and being in order to be respected. And we took that on in our churches so white people would accept us, which is why I struggle between Malcolm and Martin, right? I struggle with, because Malcolm wanted us to separate, us to separate, find our own space, and was mad at Martin because he felt like Martin wanted the acceptance of white people. Well, Malcolm was like, I don't need the acceptance of white people. And that tension sits in me sometime, because I'm like, what part of the struggle that we have with clothing and attire and appearances of Black people, right? Black women, Black men, and Black children, because we over sexualize Black children's bodies too, right? What
Yes.
part of that is from these Euro white lenses and this Euro white trash thought that wants to oppress Black women's bodies so it can be used for sexual purposes for them, and break up Black families so Black men don't see Black women as attractive, and then institute this venom within Black women to fight amongst each other because our bodies cause tension with each other because of the cellular DNA remembrance of this trauma, because it's traumatic. And so, but then we rush in to have these conversations like, hey sis, you should cover up. Hey sis, you should, opposed to maybe dealing some time with the tension of how these things make us feel and where they might come from, and let the Holy Ghost help sis change her clothing if that's to be the case.
Exactly.
Because sometimes, Reverend LaKesha, I have been pulled to the side because you could see my kneecaps. Like I had a dress on, a skirt or dress on at church, and it was above my knee. Now I'm tall. When y'all see me in person, I'm about 5'9.5". So anything I wear might look a little short.
Right.
But my thighs wasn't showing. But I had been pulled to the side to have the conversation and whispering because my knees was out. And I was like, so when folks say that, I tend to, if we have more time, but we don't, just try to unpack, well, what part of that do you mean, or how far does that go? Because it just helps give us context. And then we need to have the conversation about white lenses defining Black bodies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a passed down acceptance, I guess is the word I want to use, of body shaming. And I say it's passed down because, you know, from where I come from, your grandmothers in particular teach your mothers, and your mothers teach you. Underwear up, skirts down, that kind of thing. Making sure that early on, you yourself may even have an over sexualized understanding of clothing.
Yeah.
So early on, we develop this over sexualized understanding of our bodies.
Yeah.
At 6 and 7 years old,
Yeah.
Um, make sure that when you sit down, you don't cross your legs at the knee, you
Yeah.
cross at the ankles.
Yeah.
Because if you cross at the knee, you're exposing your thigh and could potentially expose. There's this there's this over sexualizing
Yeah.
that I totally agree with that happens, and it starts at a young age and it's passed down.
Yeah.
And it's passed down because generationally there has been some things put on the table to say that this is what Black women need to do in order to be accepted in their forms and their shapes. That's if we choose to accept them. But when you think historically about the Hottentot Venus, when you think historically about the auction block and how Black women's bodies, because that's who we're talking about right now, about how Black women's bodies were viewed, perceived, how Black women's bodies were used historically. And so, depending on that nuance of how um, ancestrally that trauma has been processed, then that coupled with white gaze
Mm.
gets it creates this strange nuance,
Yeah.
and that then gets passed down to say to try to avoid um I have it in my mind and I'm like, is it too early? No, it's not.
No.
So
Come on, tell us, Reverend. Tell us.
because that whole idea that if she's raped, it's because of what she had on.
Right.
If she's raped, it's because she was showing too much this, that, and the other. So there's this whole idea that if I shrink my femininity, if I um,
Mm.
try my best to wear the long enough skirts, the loose fitting enough clothing, even in the church,
Mm.
then that won't draw the attention of Deacon so and so.
Right.
If I attempt to make sure that I do have on the pantyhose or the stockings, which if he got a foot and leg fetish, your stockings and your foot, your pantyhose, that don't mean anything. But we've been told to try to shrink ourselves, and it's like it's an over sexualizing of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's an over sexualizing of a bra strap. It's the over sexualizing of um of if you do see when I sit down, if my shirt rises just a little bit above from my pants line. Well, I just hadn't pulled it down yet, but there's an over sexualizing of every little piece of the Black woman's body. And I think we look at it historically, we look at it at what's been passed down generationally because of white gaze, because of respectability politics, because of the embedded trauma. Um, there's just so many layers to it,
Yeah.
and so we've been taught to try to shrink ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at it from the standpoint, like I said, that whole idea of over sexualizing every aspect of who we are and it starting at a young age and being passed down. Two things, I gotta watch my time quickly. I remember um, being in a particular position at a particular church, and on day one, I had girls come to me and inform me that some inappropriate things have been going on with one of the deacons. I watched a family member of these young girls try to defend him based upon, well, I've been telling y'all not to wear them shorts so short around here. I've been telling y'all that when you come to church, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I came undone because generationally, you have passed down this idea to these girls that their abuse is their fault behind what they wore, and their children.
Right.
Number one, they're children. It's the middle of the summer. They're not allowed to wear shorts. What are you talking about?
Right.
Right.
Rather than placing the blame and the focus where it's supposed to be. So we're over sexualizing our bodies, and we're over sexualizing even the clothing that we put on our bodies. And this gets passed down.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we begin to undo? And I know that there's plenty of work, plenty of writing things out there. Um, but at the local actual church level, beyond the academy, figuring out how to get in our spaces and undo some of that damage that's been done. And it's a lot going through here, so I hope that translated well.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I always tell people, like, we don't understand that words have power.
Yeah.
And when you say those words to a woman or to a person, that replays in our head sometimes. So when I'm getting dressed, I now start to think about the words that someone said. And then I start to second guess my own comfortability.
Yeah.
I really love this dress, but because so and so said I look a little fat in it, do I
Child.
really want to wear? Even though I love this dress when I bought it, I loved it when I put it on, but
Right.
because of the words that you spoke and the power that they have in my subconscious, now I'm wondering if I should be comfortable in how I show up. And I,
Reverend,
and I think that we have to really think about, the words that we speak in it, because words have life, words have power. And
mhm.
when you're putting your thoughts or your impressions upon other people, you don't know how long that seed is going to last in their mind. And especially with young women and young girls. Dr. Farrow, you're about to say something.
I'm sorry, y'all. Yes. So Reverend Alexander had mentioned drawing attention to ourselves. And the other side of the draw attention is sometimes Black women don't feel like we're worthy of the attention. So there's tension there, right? Because the self-esteem has been so stripped, the self-confidence has been so stripped, because it's okay if attention comes. It is okay. You might not want certain levels of attention, right? Because there has been this slick undercurrent of, you don't never want nobody to notice you're beautiful, you don't never want nobody to notice that you're smart, and that only falls on our backs. It's okay if people notice. It's not okay if they do something with their behavior that makes you uncomfortable. And so when you pay a woman a compliment, that's, girl, you look nice. Oh, this whole thing, we don't even know how to receive a compliment and say thank you, because we've been so busy and being taught to deflect attention, all kinds of attention. White slave master said, don't let me catch that boy looking at you. It starts there. Right. And so we don't realize how far that goes. And so it creates all these little nuanced tensions in our mind. Listen, it gets exhausting. Remember the rules and regulation just to be Black and a woman.
And add being in ministry to it, like that's a whole nother set of rules that you want to remember.
It's a whole set. And so in the comment, we have a good, robust conversation going on. Patriarchy is a part of that. So Reverend Jen put a comment up there. You guys can read it. And someone responded, because we do look at physical appearance. It's respectability politics. Let's understand what that is traditionally. And so if you look a certain way, you will be respected. But you can act like an entire jackass every Sunday. But if you look good by being a jackass, you still gonna be respected. You still gonna be asked to preach. You can cuss folk out and lead Bible study. And if you look good, folk will overlook it. You can touch a young person in church and won't lose your post. You can sexually harass a woman in church and won't be fired. Miss me with the foolishness. Okay? Early in the morning, please. Because women have to endure all of that, and they'll still have to work and walk alongside in the Black church, our assaulters and our perpetrators. Nobody seems to give two damns. And so for me, I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I use my voice to call it out. It's patriarchy. It's matriarchy. It's sexism. It's classism. And until we start giving vocabulary, help me, Dr. Weems, in here today. Until we start giving vocabulary to what's happening, science has vocabulary, psychology has vocabulary, church calls it sin and evil. The devil is a lie. It is sexual assault. It is sexual harassment. It is being inappropriate. Don't touch me like that. Don't talk to me like that. Do not put me in your sexist categories. Let's call a thing so we can begin to unpack it and tear it down. If we don't, why is it okay for the choir member and the drummer to sleep together? The choir member gets sat down because she's visibly seen as pregnant, but the drummer don't lose his job. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me in here today? But we're more concerned about whether or not how, because we're concerned about how it looks. She is pregnant and unmarried, so that doesn't look good. But he could be a sexual perpetrator, but he can still play the drums. Miss me with the foolishness. It is something we have to work out in church, y'all. And I'm not talking, and this is not talking about white spaces, I'm talking about Black spaces, but how white spaces might have influenced Black spaces. But we have to be able to have these conversations, have a real conversation about when a woman shows up in leadership, when a woman shows up, Reverend LaKesha, just come to church in the morning. Why is there so many rules and regulations, red tape and bureaucracy for her to sit down and engage Black Jesus? Why?
Come on.
Why? It's too much. So I digress, y'all, because y'all done got me fired up in here this morning. But it's a real thing.
All right, I need y'all to type yes in the chat if you all think we need to continue this conversation over in the Rethink Church group, because I feel like there's so much more that we need to unpack, because this conversation started like I kind of have, one thing, but I think that there's so much more as we're talking about women's bodies and the church that we need to unpack and even like educate some people on, because I don't think that some people are even aware of their own biases, men and women, and how they may have been a part of the problem and not even realize it, because so often we don't talk about it. And so they just assume that it's okay. And we're like on the inside crying like, yo, like this is not okay. But if I say something, then I become a problem. If I say something, then I might not get the opportunities. So I just will, brush it off. Because what do we do? Like when someone says something inappropriate, we just be like, oh, whatever. We just instead of saying this person assaulted me, because that's what it was. This person is harassing me, because we don't want to create that tension. So we got a lot of yeses. So don't be surprised. Like I'm gonna call you guys back, and I feel like we can bring some other women into the conversation to just start to really unpack this for people. Because as we rethink church and what it means to do impact ministry, women have to be able to show up as their full selves. And we also have to get to the level where we start calling the men out who are the perpetrators, because I think that we do have this conversation about women and our bodies, but there aren't as many conversations about men and the level of accountability they need to accept for the role that they play. And I think we have to be the ones to stop that. And to say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to continue taking on the responsibility for this. We're going to start to tell you guys like, nah, this ain't it.
Yeah.
And you guys want to come back?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And to also give women and men agency, right? People, when you come from a communal space and you come from a community, that also, so it goes back to what Reverend Alexander said earlier about not doing it alone. There's so many benefits to not doing it by yourself. You have community, and you have it promotes agency in your life, because you have people who will support you. Some people, the scripture says that God will be your vindicator. Some people will go out and fight for you on your behalf, and you won't have to say a thing. And that's helpful because it reduces the trauma impact that you have to take, right? And so when we talk about these spaces and accountability, sometimes women against women have been the worst perpetrators, because we keep re-perpetrating and re-injuring and re-traumatizing. So we have to unpack, like you're right, Rev, there's a lot more conversation to have. We have so many pieces to this that needs to have conversation. But I think we dug up some good ground this morning.
Yes. Dr. Farrow, you made me think of something. I'm gonna have to hold it till the next one. But that internalized patriarchy is real.
Woo, girl, it's real. It's real.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for getting up early this morning and getting us started with some fire, because we definitely had the chat going this morning. So you guys take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back with our keynote speaker for this morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Pamela Lightsey. Cannot wait to hear from her and just about the liberation that she has been able to achieve in her life, and how she works to help others achieve that liberation, even in traditional ministry spaces. So thank you, ladies, and I will see everyone else in about 5 minutes.
Thank you.